Hi, this is Don with another sea story from the Navy. This happened over 50 years ago, but it's in my memory almost to where I can remember as if it happened yesterday. So, the way this starts, I was serving aboard the USS Richard B. Anderson. I'd started in the deck force. I became a quartermaster striker, and then I took the test and became a third class quartermaster. Well, we had too many third class quartermasters on the USS Richard B. Anderson now, and so we knew somebody was getting transferred off. Well, one night I went to bed after having stood the 8 to midnight watch, so I got to sleep until 7 o'clock instead of 6. So they wake me up and says, "Hey, you've been transferred." I says, "What?" It's kind of caught me by surprise. So I had the 8 to 12 watch that morning, so I headed up after breakfast to my watch. And there I am at the ship's log in the chart table. And I can remember this. There was an officer named Mr. Snyder. He was over there standing on the other side of the bridge. And he's looking over his messages and says, "Clark," he says, "you're supposed to be transferred today, right now. You got 10 minutes to get out of here and get ready to go. We have a ship coming alongside, and we're going to transfer you over to them." So, boy, I hustled down, picked up my stuff, got it all ready to go, and the USS Edwards, which is the sister ship to the USS Parsons, which is the ship that I was being transferred to, came alongside. Now, when ships come alongside, they're doing usually about 14 knots each, next to each other, and heading the same direction. And they have a line that we call it a line in the Navy. Actually, civilians call them ropes. But anyway, there was a line between the two ships, and of course, there's people that are holding onto the line. I've been on these before. When I was in the deck force, might be 15 of you on the line. And you're there, don't want to pull too hard because you can pull the ship over. And if you don't want to let it go too far away, ships might get too far away from you. So it's kind of a little delicate situation where you're holding the ship steady. Now, the seas weren't too bad that day. So they put me in a bosun chair. This is just a chair you sit in. And they have another line that connects to. You could consider it like a clothesline. And so then, sure enough, you get in there and the other people pull you across to the other ship. Well, there's water, probably 100 feet between the two ships, maybe 150 feet, and where you're traveling over the waves that are passing by under you at 14 knots. So anyway, I get to the other ship, and this was on a Saturday morning, sometime before noon. So I ate lunch on that ship, and then later on, there's a helicopter that came over about 5:30 that evening, and it hovered over the fantail. Well, the fantail is the back end of the destroyer. And so I was standing back there, and they lowered down a harness from the helicopter. I put that on, had my life jacket on, and then they just reeled me right into the helicopter, got me inside, and flew me across to the USS Ranger, where they landed me on the flight deck. So I'm there with my sea bag, and they said, "Okay, we're going to take you down to where you're going to sleep tonight." And I'd never been on an aircraft carrier before. It was pretty amazing to me. It's just a very large ship that you hardly know it's even out to sea. It's so steady most of the time. Except you get in rough weather, it's not. But it was interesting. So we headed on down the many different decks. And on the way down, one of the officer that was having me go down, he just picked up my sea bag and threw it down to the next deck. Well, that wasn't a smart thing to do, because it wasn't that I just had clothes in my sea bag. I did have a camera in there, and yeah, it got broken. Anyway, so I stayed the night there on the aircraft carrier, and then the next day they said, well, you're flying out with the mail, on a mail plane. Well, the mail plane was a 2-engine plane, so it was pretty small, and it had a lot of mail in it, and they put me in it, and they strapped me into it. Now, in a mail plane, it was, the seats are faced toward the back of the plane, and so they put a harness over you, kind of like an X across your chest, and I'm sitting there not knowing exactly what to do, or what to expect, because I'd never been on a plane like this or an aircraft carrier where I'd be catapulted off. So I'm sitting there in the plane, and it's just, they've revved the engine up, and they're just loud and roaring like crazy, and I'm thinking, are these engines going to stay on the plane? I mean, it was crazy. And then all of a sudden, we're off. The catapult took us off, sent us off the deck, and we're flying. A couple minutes later, I look down, and here's this little aircraft carrier in this huge ocean. Man, that's a different perspective. So anyway, I think we flew for an hour and a half into the Philippines, into Clark Air Force Base. And that was nearby to the Subic Bay Naval Station, where I was going to catch my ship, the USS Parsons. So I get there, I get to Clark, and then I get to Subic Bay, and they say, oh, all the ships left the port because of a typhoon. Couldn't keep them here. So they said, you're going to be here until your ship comes back. And I think, oh, last thing I wanted to do. Here I am, stuck in some barracks for 11 days, not knowing at that time exactly when the ship was coming back. And it was kind of boring in that situation. And hot, even though typhoons are around. It's just hot in the Philippines. Very humid. And so eventually the ship shows up. Actually, it showed up on December 24th. And so I'm excited about getting my ship, new duty station. I got my sea bag, get out there to the ship, report aboard, and the chief quartermaster says, well, you're AWOL. I says, what? He says, yeah. We met up with your ship out there in the ocean, and you weren't there. I said, that's because they transferred me over here, and I was waiting for you. Anyway, it took a little while before I could convince the guy that I'm not AWOL. I was just following orders here. Anyway, so then we started a new adventure on a new ship. And it was an interesting experience making that transfer because, I've never since been on a helicopter or been highlined across the ship. So it was an interesting experience. So I'll catch you again.